Welcome back to our basketball previews on the 35th annual Ozarks Basketball Preview. As we mentioned earlier with Brett Reed, we have two coaches this year. The other is the gentleman sitting to my left, the head coach of the Kickapoo Chiefs, state champions, and a really magnificent 28-2 year. This is Mitch McHenry, who really hasn't been at Kickapoo all that long, but it's been a hugely successful venture since you've been there. That state championship had to be a crowning glory, and probably Mitch the first of many.
Well, I think you're maybe a little bit more optimistic than I am, but those things are hard to come by. And, in high school, I played a lot of sports. I was a three-sport athlete and didn't get the chance to get to a Final Four. I've watched my dad being a coach's kid. I've watched my dad. He did not get to his first Final Four till, I think, like year 28 or 29. With my sister in her senior year out at Rogersville. That was his first Final Four appearance. And he had a lot of good teams, coached several different sports. So, obviously we want to get back. That's the goal every single year. I'm blessed to be in a program that has a lot of talent. But those things are hard to come by. And we had a really special run, special group last year. And would love the opportunity for our new group and guys to get a taste of that postseason play.
Really astute point that you just made. There are a lot of breaks. There's a little bit of luck that goes in. You can have the greatest team in the world, but you've got to have a little bit of luck too. Did you see that at all with the Kickapoo team last year?
I think you look at different ventures. The one thing about our games down kind of in our postseason run, we never had any games that were just came down to one or two possessions. But you look back in the games and look at some pretty important points that really, if a shot drops or doesn't drop, I think in our championship game against Republic, it's maybe like a 4-point game, and Nick Millen shooting a three that's pretty open for him. He's their best shooter. He's the kid that had whatever it was, 18 threes in a game or something like that. And 4-point game, he's got an open look at three and just misses it. Well, if that turns into a 1-point game and one possession game, then that changes things a little bit. You look back to our semifinal game in Chaminade, they hit a three to go up one, and then we come back and hit a three to go up two going into that fourth quarter, and then we have the ball and we can dictate that fourth quarter a little bit. So you look at a couple possessions here and there that swing the other way, and it makes what we were able to accomplish that much more difficult.
We'll talk about the earlier games in that March to the state championship, but since you mentioned that, Chaminade and Liberty, how did you, with opponent Liberty's the championship game, how did you assess those teams? This is the big cities now. This is St. Louis and Kansas City, and allegedly superior players. Did you see that?
Chaminade's got a kid that is going to be a future pro that's down at Link now, and he'll be in the league one day, and he's a special dude. I have a coaching staff that's awesome. So when it was Final Four week, we are getting as much film and breaking down as much film as possible. And I'm very, very blessed to have my father with me, to have Jamie Donnelly with me, who's I played with at Evangel, who's been with me all 5 years at Kickapoo. Scotty Kuyeth was our freshman coach, and we jumped in there in our spring break. We're logging long hours during our spring break and our time off to try to get our kids ready to go against two opponents we hadn't seen. We don't know much information besides calling other coaches and watching film on Huddle. Our kids, you look at the talent, and talent's one thing, but the way our kids prepared the last month and a half of the season for 16, 17, 18-year-olds, it was at like a professional level. They were locked in on film sessions. They were locked in on our scouting reports. When we went through stuff on the court, they were ready to go. And we felt good going into whether we were going to win or lose, but we knew we were prepared and our kids were ready to go because of what they did going into those Final Four games. And that's hard to get teenagers to understand and do how important the stuff outside of basketball is to prepare to be successful in the biggest moments of your career to that point.
Well, the question is, though, is there a trick to doing that from a coaching standpoint, getting them ready like that?
Well, I think I think one thing is our kids want to play the next level. So if you want to play the next level, this is an expectation. It's going to be an expectation at Mizzou. It's going to be an expectation at Missouri State for our kids that are playing there now. I was able to play at Evangel, so being able to play that next level and know what it takes on scouting reports and preparing for opponents and a long season. So we just try to hit home with our kids, and we have had great buy-in in our program with preparing, and we spend a lot of time, important time, talking about scouting reports, watching film on Huddle. We utilize Huddle a ton, and they do a great job of watching on their own or being locked in our film sessions.
Well, facing adversity was something that Kickapoo didn't do very often. You did have the 2 losses, one of them to the Hartfield team, and these were both very, very close games. These were late, middle to the latter part of the season. How did Kickapoo react? How did the kids react since they had such an outstanding campaign going?
Well, I think the big thing, one, we lost to Greenwood early in our first term of the year, and we just got back to film and figured out why we lost. We did things that we were right there in both games, but we did things that we didn't deserve to win in that game. We weren't consistent enough. We didn't make plays when we needed to, or made mistakes. So, for us, and it's when you have a ton of expectations and a lot of talent, then, those losses can cause you to splinter and go your own way. And I didn't really see that too much. I saw guys frustrated a little bit, but we watched film and we'd learn and figure out what we need to do better. We kind of made a run and then played Hartville and didn't play our best, and they had a lot to do with that. And we watched film, and it wasn't a fun film session. And we figured out what we needed to do better and how we needed to improve. The great thing about that Hartfield game is we got to turn around and play Greenwood the next day and played really well. We played Sunrise the next day and then finished with Greenwood on that Saturday and played really well. So we were able to kind of move past that Hartfield game pretty quick because we played well after that. But you just learn. Even down the stretch when we played conference opponents and stuff like that, we were continuing to try to improve our game and not be satisfied where we were at, because we want to be playing our best ball at the end, not at the beginning of the season or middle of the season. We want our best ball when it's district time and in the playoffs.
And obviously the kids bought into that. They knew they had to play their best and so forth. Is that a general assessment of every team that you've coached where they buy into it, or have you had some who just simply went through the motions?
Well, I think your season's a roller coaster. There's a lot of ups and downs with any sports, and you talk about adversity, and that's one of the great things in teaching lessons with sports is the adversity, the trials and errors, the accomplishments, and then coming up short. It's one of the great teaching lessons to our coaches and our kids with playing a sport. So I feel like the last 2 seasons we have played our best basketball at the end of the year. Last year, 2 years ago, when COVID ended our season, we were playing really, really well. Last year we were playing really, really well. You don't always get that. Some of it's just because the grind of the season and guys are worn down and maybe looking at the end. Some of it is injuries and you don't have your best guys and guys that are 100% ready to go. And there's a lot of factors when we talk about teenagers. There's a lot of factors that can occur and show up that can cause you not to keep playing to your best potential. But we really felt like we were as close as we could have been to our fullest potential last year down the stretch.
When Mitch McHenry puts his team out on the court, not just Kickapoo, but with any team, and we'll certainly focus on Kickapoo, every good coach has a coach on the floor, one of the players. Who did you have last year for Kickapoo? Who was really the guide?
I mean, I think Anton's been that. There's not many kids at the Class 6 level that start as a freshman. In every single game he played, he was our starting point guard. And he missed about the last 9 games or so his freshman year when he broke his foot. But besides that, he was a starting point guard his entire career at Kickapoo. So, and he was a vocal leader. He was a guy that had a high basketball IQ, so he knew where other guys needed to be. So seeing that and being able to, coach with him. This is going to be year 5 for me at Kickapoo as a head coach. This is going to be the first year without Anton Brookshire running the point. So, there's some big shoes to fill this upcoming year when we try to find a primary ball handler, because that's usually your extension of the point guard, is that primary ball handler and that point guard, because they have really the biggest responsibility on the court.
Well, you're a believer then in the guards being the key to any good basketball game.
Yeah, well, it's a guard game.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's things that can be done to take away a post player and to make them less efficient. Now, when you have a good post player, it can open up and free up a lot of things. But it's a guard game, and really at every single level it's a guard game. But especially high school, if you have good guards, you can kind of dictate the tempo of the game and how the game's played out. So guards are really important. And like last year, we had our 2 primary ball handlers were Isaac Haney and Anton Brookshire, and those are 2 elite guys and smart guys and high IQ guys, which is why we had the success we had.
How big an influence is your dad? Was he in this situation, and how long, not that long, but how much of an influence has he been as your career goes on?
I think he's been everything. I have picked the career I have because of him. I got to grow up in a gym, fell in love with the things I did in the sports I played, and being at the baseball field, being at the football field, being in the gym. That's like, we spent hours. Kids would go home after school. When they were elementary kids, I went to the gym, and I got to play and sit through a couple-hour practice of high school kids, and I got to play with them and mess around with them after practice. Like, that was my life, and it's why I picked what I'm doing. It's because I got to grow up and see how special it is, how fun it is, and then it's been awesome to have him on the bench with me, to kind of bounce ideas, to let him take a group and coach a group, and as far as my situation position, I can't ask for anything better from a coaching standpoint, and just the people I have around me and the program that I get to lead. But it's been even more special to be able to do it alongside him.
It's really refreshing to hear, because not often, but on occasion, when you talk to a coach's son, they rail at having their father around. Oh, too much hands-on and too much influence and all that. Not the case with your dad.
Well, I gotta get. He likes to sit back, and he often says, I'm here to help. This is your program. I'm like, you're here to coach, so get after him and coach him and take some control. So at times I gotta get him going, because he just wants to sit back and just kind of give advice in the background, or just kind of talk to me whenever after practice. So he's been a great guide through the other stuff that a lot of people don't see, just the coaching, all the other responsibilities of a head coach. He's helped out that quite a bit, but every single year he's doing something different than he's ever done, because he's always been a head coach for the most part. He's only spent a couple years at Rogersville where he was an assistant coach. Besides that, he's a head coach. So every year it gets a little bit smoother with me telling him to do this or that, or him just taking responsibility and doing it. And I think he's just sitting back. He's at the end of his career, so he's not wanting to step on anybody's toes, or he's wanting our young coaches to do their thing. But it's been awesome, and he's been great, and he's helped out. Coach Donnelly, I talked about, has been with me this whole time. He's helped out both of us the last 3 years since he's joined us.
Where, during the point of last season, did you tell yourself, or maybe your dad and your assistant coaches, we're pretty good, we could win a state championship?
I mean, you have the expectations that you want to win. I don't know if you ever feel like you're for sure going to do it. I've never felt like that. I don't really go into games like that. I go into games thinking about, what can go wrong, what adjustments do we need to make. Like I said earlier, we felt great going into our Final Four, but we knew it was going to be a battle. And like we said at the beginning, if there's 2 possessions that change in that Chaminade game, then we probably don't run away from it in the fourth quarter like we did, and have a comfortable last couple minutes, in few minutes. So I've played enough sports to understand there's a fine line and a small line between winning and losing at the highest level. So you know, when we bounced back and played well against Greenwood in January at Missouri State, we felt good that we could handle adversity. And then we went on a run, and we were really prepared for our playoff games and going through districts. But we had so many good teams that we had to play and beat. You know, we knew Republic was going to be coached better than anybody we were going to see with Coach Brown over Republic, and be more prepared. And they gave us a tough test, and then you're playing Nixa for the third time, and you know how that goes in sports. And having to overcome that, or having to tell your guys to stay hungry, even though we beat them twice, it doesn't mean anything. This is the one that really matters. And for our guys not to lose focus or not to be arrogant and still go into that game and being ready to work and doing whatever it takes. So I think just you don't really feel like you're going to win it all until that final buzzer rings and horn goes off and you've won it. That's kind of, I'd say, man, that's when I felt like we were going to win it, is when we finally, you know, game was over and it was done.
And when that happened, what went through your head?
I don't know. I think I went to find Liberty's coach, you know, pretty quick and shake his hand. I probably should have turned pretty quickly over to my dad and give him a hug, but that was kind of delayed. So I went over and found Liberty's coach and just told him, I mean, he had a great group and a special group, and he's coaching his son right now. So I understand that bond and being that close with your son, and just coming up a little bit short. So I very much understand that, being a coach's son. But as soon as I shook his hand, then I went and found our coaches, and we had a big hug, and it was a pretty special moment.
In talking with your predecessor on this presentation, Brett Reed, he mentioned the fact that, of course, you're not going to win every game. It doesn't happen that way. But he can't get enough of coaching. It's his life. That's what he's always wanted to do. How about Mitch McHenry?
I mean, I can't imagine doing anything different. You know, my dad's been doing it. I think he's 31 or 32 years in public education now. He's done it his entire life. Every single year he's coached multiple sports. For me, I like coaching. So right now I've got a 5-year-old daughter. Right now we are attempting to play basketball with some 5- and 6-year-old girls, which is a challenge in itself. So I've got a former Kickapoo assistant, Coach Brummel, that we're kind of helping out, and Coach Carpenter out at Marshfield. We got all our girls together, and we're attempting to coach some basketball with some young girls. I just, you know, you love sports and you love the competition, but you also love just working with kids to kind of meet their goals and their expectations. And there's a lot of kids that are putting a lot of time into sports right now, and to be able to just be a vehicle for them, to help them kind of get the goals and the same goals that I had as a teenager, and help them on that process and that road is pretty fulfilling for me in my life. And there's long hours. There's a lot of time away from my 2 girls and my wife, especially during the winter. But I enjoy and can't really think of doing anything else that would bring the fulfillment that I have.
It's passion, folks. Passion for the goal in life. And Mitch McHenry at Kickapoo certainly displays that, as does Brett Reed at Hartville, and I dare say probably most coaches. Very quickly, your high school and your college.
Republic High School, and then went to Evangel University.
And you played for Steve Jenkins, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The Evangel program now has a new coach, Bert Capel. Were you there when he was
My freshman year? It was his last year as an assistant coach before he went to a different school, and went kind of that D1 level. But it was great. He's doing a great job. We're really excited. Coach Jenkins is one of a kind, very renowned in this area. And Bert's going to do a great job with that program. We're really excited. And
you're doing a great job at Kickapoo, as signified by the Coach of the Year award, which you're getting. We have 2 Coaches of the Year, and Mitch McHenry at Springfield Kickapoo is one of them, having won the state championship at the JQH Arena. It helps to play at home, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Mitch, congratulations. This is great.
Thank you, Dad.